This is the greatness of the U.S. aircraft carrier ever built in its time. The United States Navy's 10 nuclear supercarriers are the largest warships on the high seas. Home to more than 5,000 sailors and Marines, the Nimitz-class carriers are nuclear-powered and can carry nearly 90 combat aircraft. Still, it didn't have to be this way. Had the Navy taken a different tack several decades ago, the gigantic ships would have been supplemented with smaller, more cost-effective flat tops. During World War II, the U.S. Navy operated two types of carriers: larger fleet carriers and escort carriers. The larger carriers comprised the main offensive striking power of the fleet, carrying a mixture of fighters, dive bombers, and torpedo bombers. After the war, the Navy operated a range of carriers, from full-sized nuclear-powered fleet carriers such as USS Enterprise to the smaller attack carriers and anti-submarine carriers of the wartime Essex class. Gradually, however, as the older, smaller carriers aged out, they were replaced by supercarriers. No smaller carriers were built, and by the mid-1980s, almost all of the U.S. Navy's carriers were at least 1,000 feet long. The drift towards large carriers was a mixture of politics and practicality. Although defense dollars flowed relatively freely during the Cold War, it was safer to propose buying one large carrier in 1 year than two smaller carriers in back-to-back years. Large carriers were more cost-effective. One hull with a 6,000-man crew was cheaper to operate than two hulls that required a total of 9,000 men, but collectively had just as many planes. A single carrier also required only one set of cruisers, destroyers, and frigates as escorts. Still, large carriers are extremely expensive, both to buy and to operate, and elements both inside and outside the Navy searched for alternatives. During the 1970s, then Chief of Naval Operations Admiral Elmo Zumwalt struggled with the twin problems of a declining post-Vietnam defense budget and the obsolescence of large numbers of World War II-era Navy ships. Zumwalt's proposal to keep the size of the fleet large was to create a high-low mix of ships split between very capable high-end ships and less capable low-end ships. This extended to carriers, and Zumwalt proposed a so-called medium aircraft carrier to supplement the existing supercarriers. The medium aircraft carrier would weigh in at around 61,000 tons, be conventionally powered, and have a 908-foot-long flight deck. The medium aircraft carrier would have just two steam catapults instead of the four that were on larger carriers, meaning it could launch planes at just half the rate of larger carriers. There were also advantages in building more, smaller carriers. For the first time in decades, the number of carriers dropped below 20, making it increasingly unlikely that enough flight decks would be available during a conventional war to service all requirements. Spreading naval aviation out among war platforms made it more resistant to individual wartime carrier losses. Despite the proposed advantages of the medium aircraft carrier, the disadvantages of the smaller platform ultimately made it unattractive. The advantages of larger ships were so significant that, as it could afford the larger ships, the Navy would continue to buy them. Currently, the U.S. Navy operates 10 Nimitz-class aircraft carriers, and no other Navy on the planet has anything remotely close to these massive warships, the largest of their kind until the commissioning of USS Gerald R. Ford in 2017. With more than 6,000 personnel serving on board, including 3,200 sailors and 2,480 airmen, a length of 317 meters, 1,092 feet, and a displacement of 102,000 tons, these vessels are essentially floating cities. The nuclear-powered carriers have 2 reactors and 4 shafts for propulsion, which allow the warships to reach a top speed of 30+ knots, 34.5 miles per hour. Each of the Nimitz class has an expected 50-year service life with 1 midlife refueling, but in October 2020, the U.S. Navy announced that it was considering an extension to the service lives of the lead vessels. All 10 of the Nimitz-class aircraft carriers were constructed between 1968 and 2006 at Newport News Shipbuilding Company, now Northrop Grumman Ship Systems, at Newport News, Virginia, at the largest dry dock in the Western Hemisphere at a unit cost of approximately $8.5 billion, constant year FY $12. Since the USS Theodore Roosevelt, CVN-72, the fourth carrier of the class to be built, all have been manufactured in modular construction that has allowed whole sections to be welded together with plumbing and electrical equipment already fitted. Each carrier is equipped with approximately 60 aircraft, including a variety of fixed-wing and rotary-wing aircraft of up to 90 of various types. The flight deck, which measures 1,092 feet by 252 feet, is also equipped with 4 lifts, 4 steam-driven catapults, and 4 arrestor wires. The Nimitz-class aircraft carriers are capable of launching one air every 20 seconds. In addition to the air wing, the most recently built Nimitz-class carriers are now armed with 3 Raytheon GMLS Mk-29 8-cell launchers for NATO Sea Sparrow surface-to-air missiles, which provide semi-radar terminal guidance. Additionally, there are 4 Raytheon/General Dynamics 20mm Phalanx 6-barreled Mk-15 close-in weapon systems that have a 3,000 RPM rate of fire. While the Nimitz class is now being replaced by the Gerald R. Ford class, Old Salt and her 9 sister carriers will remain in service for years to come and remain unrivaled across the waters of the world.